by a bee, ruled down, confined, kutyayam, in a hole in a wall, tam, that bee, anusmaran, thinking of, samramba yogena, through intense fear and enmity, vindate, attains, tat, of that bee, svarupatam, the same form, evam, thus, Krishna, in Krishna, Bhagavati, personality of Godhead, Maya Manuje, who appeared by his own unity, in his eternal human-like form, Ishvare, the Supreme, Vairena, by enmity, Bhuta Padmanaha, those purified of sins, Tam, him, Apu, attains, Anuchintaya, by thinking of, translation. The grassworm confined in a hole of a wall by a bee always thinks of the bee in fear and enmity, and later becomes a bee simply because of such remembrance. Similarly, if the conditioned souls somehow or other think of Krishna, who is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, they will become free from their sins, whether thinking of him as their worshipful Lord or enemy. Because of constantly thinking of him, they will regain their spiritual bodies. Purport by Sri Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita 4.10, the Lord says, Vita raga vya krodha manmaya mamupashritaha baho gyana tavasa utamadvam agataha. Being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. There are two ways of constantly thinking of Krishna, as a devotee and as an enemy. A devotee, of course, by his knowledge and tapasya, becomes free from fear and anger and becomes a pure devotee. Similarly, an enemy, although thinking of Krishna inimically, thinks of him constantly and also becomes purified. This is confirmed elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 9.30, where the Lord says, Abhichet suracharo bhakyate mam ananyavak saro eva samantabhya samyak yasato isaha. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he engages in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. A devotee undoubtedly worships the Lord with rapt attention. Similarly, if an enemy, Sudarachara, always thinks of Krishna, he also becomes a purified devotee. The example given here concerns the grassworm that becomes bee-like because of constantly thinking of the bee that forces it to enter a hole. By always thinking of the bee in fear, the grassworm starts to become a bee. This is a practical example. Lord Krishna appears within this material world for two purposes: paritranaya sarnam vinashaya duskritam, to protect the devotees and annihilate the demons. The sadhus and devotees certainly think of the Lord always, but duskritis, the demons like Kansa and Shishupal, also think of Krishna in terms of killing him. By thinking of Krishna, both the demons and devotees attain liberation from the clutches of material Maya. This verse uses the word Maya Manuje. When Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in his original spiritual potency, Sambhavam Yatma Maya, he is not forced to accept the form made by material nature. Therefore the Lord is addressed as Ishvara, the controller of Maya. He is not controlled by Maya. When a demon continuously thinks of Krishna because of enmity toward him, he is certainly freed from the sinful reactions of his life. To think of Krishna anyway in terms of his name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, or anything pertaining to him, is beneficial for everyone. Srinvatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. Thinking of Krishna, hearing the holy name of Krishna, or hearing the pastimes of Krishna will make one pure, and then he will become a devotee. Our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to reduce the system of somehow or other letting everyone hear the holy name of Krishna and take Krishna's prasad. Thus, one will gradually become a devotee and his life will be successful. Kita Pisashkrita Ruda Kudya Yantadan Tamanusmaran Samurambam by Yogena Indate Tatsvarupatam Evam Krishna Bhagavati Maya Manuja Isvari Varena Putapatmanas Tam Apur Anuchintaya. The grassworm confined in a hole of a wall by a bee always thinks of the bee in fear and enmity, and later becomes a bee simply because of such remembrance. Similarly, if the conditioned souls somehow or other think of Krishna, who is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, they will become free from their sins, whether thinking of him as their worshipful Lord or an enemy. Because of constantly thinking of him, they will regain their spiritual bodies. Så det er for det første interessant eksempel, der bliver givet. I synes det er egentlig, sorry, you here also. Yeah. Why don't you closer? You're sitting so far away. You can build closer. I'm not sitting there. So this is an interesting example, first of all, that is given here in this verse, with a very concrete example from the insect world, where also the law of karma, the law of transmigration applies. As we know that Krishna, he says in Bhagavad Gita, Yam yam bhavi smaram bhavan chada chente kalevaram tam tam nivaiti kauteya sadata bhavavita. That whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state of being he will attain without fail. What one is thinking of at the moment of death, that's what will become in your next lifetime. So that's actually, it's universal and very simple principle, and very important. It's one of the most important verses in the Bhagavad Gita to always remember that what we are, we can die in a moment, and what's going to be our destiny. Well, the thoughts at the moment of death is going to bring us to where, it's according to that thought. Which means thinking, we have to be very, very careful with our thinking, what we're meditating upon. That's another word, meditate, and thinking, as someone would say, meditation is controlled thinking, which we practice to form our thinking at the time of death. This is actually the goal. We are controlled, we engage in meditation so that at the point of death we can leave this body with the right thought, the thought of think of Krishna at the moment of death. Because the moment of death, of course, is a result of a cultivation in life. What's the thinking that one is cultivating through his life is what will be the prominent thought when one leaves his body. And the thing is, everyone is cultivating, but some are just being washed away by the modes of nature, but still they're cultivating thoughts, lusty thoughts, thoughts of sense gratification, and so on. And if that's what one is cultivating, or being forced to cultivate, then that is the thinking that will be prominent at the moment of death. It's the moment of death. The thought there is it's not that one can, we know this, we can do anything, we can think anything, and then now the moment of death comes, okay, now I think of Krishna. One cannot think like that. We have only to be concerned about the moment of death. Whatever else we do the rest of our life doesn't matter. Because we just have to think of Krishna when we die. But the point is, death is not such a moment that you can just, generally not. Only if one is actually a great yogi, and a great devotee, and a great transcendentalist, then one is actually in complete control of one's thoughts all the time. But otherwise, if one is under the most material nature, one's mind is just being battered here and there, washed, especially in the moment of death. It's a very intense moment. And the bodily functions are out of control, and also the mind at that point will actually be out of control. And simply what one has been cultivating through one's life, that will be what is prominent. It will be like it's you know, like you have a big calculation, lots of numbers, you know, this added to this, multiplied by this, by this, by this, and then at the bottom line there is a result, bang, like that. So that's at the end of life, it's like that. The whole life actually will be calculated, whatever you did this, and you've been cultivating this thought, bottom line result, that's what you've been thinking of. You're not in control of anything at that time. Unless one actually was cultivating deliberate Krishna consciousness, then one can think of Krishna, otherwise not. Or generally not, because I'm trying to get back to that. There's always, really the whole thing is controlled by Krishna, and Krishna is not, ultimately he doesn't follow any formula, he's free to do whatever he likes. And this is what actually is the theme also of this chapter here, these verses here. The enemies who are actually not cultivating Krishna consciousness, but they are Krishna conscious through fear and enmity, they also achieve Krishna somehow or other mystically. So from one mundane point, one would say, that's not fair. This is not right. This is not justice. No, the devotees, they are so good. They are so, they're good people, pious people, nice people, never do anything wrong. And here we have these demons, and they, they only are envious and sinful and violent, and they attain same result. This is not fair. And that's the point. That's where we see Krishna is completely independent. He's not controlled by, like the principles of mundane justice and morality. Krishna doesn't all follow that. He's not obliged to follow that. He can do whatever he likes. That's ultimately the real conclusion. But generally, there's a connection. We see that one can be extremely fortunate by Krishna's grace somehow or other to think of Krishna at the moment of death, like Ajamila. The Ajamila story was given in the 6th canto. Ajamila was the most sinful rascal, but somehow or other he, by chance, thought of Narayan at the moment of death because he had called his son Narayan. But that was exceptional. It's not something one can plan on. One has to plan on one has to do generally the hard work, and then the result will be that there's a generally direct connection. Krishna lets it be like that, but and then sometimes there are exceptions. So, but anyway, this principle of leaving the body at the moment of death with the right, with the right thinking, or the other way, what one is thinking of at the moment of death determines one's next lifetime. Is here being illustrated from the insect world, that a grass worm, I'm not sure which kind of insect that is, but it is a tiny insect, and it's a worm. some insects. Some insects, they actually, at the larvae stage, they're worms, and then they change into insects. They actually change their body in this lifetime. Do you think you ever thought of that? That you know, you have butterflies, for example, who are they hatched from eggs, and then they are larvae, and then at one point when they have grown, fully grown, then actually they completely throw this larvae body, and then they come out in a new body as a butterfly. And as far as I know, actually, isn't that most insects actually like that? Have a larvae stage, then they give off the larvae stage, then they become insects, flying insects. I think it's called metamorphosis. Is that someone who knows? Some things called metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis. Okay, metamorphosis. Yeah, you biologists. Metamorphosis. And just as a side remark, that's complete mystery in terms of evolution. How did that just happen by evolutionary process? I mean, one body itself is impossible to explain by evolution, and that, you know, a living being casts off its one body, and just a new body emerges, completely different body emerges from the first body. How did that come about? By some chance process? I think that there was they made a film about that. An anti-evolution film was made some years ago, getting into details of metamorphosis discussion. I never saw it, but I'd actually like to see it. So nature in essence is fantastic. Cruel, brutal, birth and death, but fantastic somehow. And so these are actually experiencing reincarnation in one lifetime, so to speak. They're changing bodies like that. Of course, we are also changing bodies. It's very gradual, but here they have it very drastic. It's like, I go out there and I just, Indra just sipping up his sweater. So it's like that, you just sip up your body, you throw it off, and then there's another body inside. That's metamorphosis. I have to learn to pronounce that word properly. So that example is given there, that these tiny worms which are caught by bees do that, they catch other insects and worms, and then they put them in a hole, and then they plaster the hole with mud so these insects cannot get out, and then they just have in there, this is their, they have them there, it's a food chamber, and then at one point when they're hungry, then they just go there and just open the food chamber, and then they take out, and then they eat. Like that. So, what is that insect or that grassworm inside? What is he thinking of? He's thinking of the bee in terror and fear. And what is the result? Next lifetime, he becomes a bee. That's actually the example that's given here. Just such an illustration of this law of thinking. So that is given here. Cruel example is given here, very realistic from nature, and then the other example is given that whoever thinks of Krishna, even in fear and enmity, will become like Krishna. Of course, we do not become Krishna, but we attain Krishna's nature, which is pure. One becomes purified of all sins and sinful reactions and sinful mentality, and one attains one's spiritual nature by meditating on Krishna, even in fear and enmity and so on. That's that's the amazing thing. Of course, again, I'm not getting into details. That is not the message. Is not that this is a process. Prabhupada gets very much into here that we have to follow the proper process and practice in order to actually focus our mind on Krishna, to always associate with Krishna through remembrance and chanting and hearing and service. And by doing that, then we will definitely become purified, and we'll be able to remember Krishna at the moment of death and go back home, back to Godhead. But Krishna is free, as we see from here. Actually, he can also award that same benediction to others who may not be following a strict process like that, who will become enemies and like that. It is an uncontrolled process, but sometimes happens. Someone becomes so Krishna conscious that they achieve the same results, which goes to show that Krishna is completely free to do whatever he likes. And that's one point also that is the main characteristic about devotional service, that it's important that we always remember it's not a mechanical thing. We do engage in strict practice as far as possible. We follow the process of regulated principles, regulated life, and faithfully practicing through many years, actually through our whole lifetime, and then being Krishna conscious at the moment of death. And we're supposed to do that, but it's always important to remember it's not a mechanical thing. It's not. It really depends on Krishna is in the other end, and he's reciprocating, and he's completely free to reciprocate as he likes. It's not that it's not mechanical means. It's not you cannot follow a formula or it's not like in a process for example you have in a factory, a chemical factory, and if you follow the whole chemical formula, or it's actually called an algorithm. You know the word algorithm? It's used in mathematics, but also it's generally algorithms is like actually like if you have a recipe for a cake. First you have to first this, and then that, and then this, and then you do that, and then this, and then that, and then the result is in the end. That's more or less like an algorithm. Works like that. And so if you're in a chemical production like that, you have you want the end results, plastic, for example. Then there is a process that has to be followed, and it might have to be followed very precisely with precise quantities and precise temperature, and highly sometimes with maybe the 10,000ths of a precision, or something like very precise. So it takes expert engineering. It's not something that can be done just haphazardly. It takes extreme precision sometimes. But still, if one practices or performs, if this process is done with extreme precision, the result is always there. It's certain, like that. Follow it, then one gets always the result. Krishna consciousness is not like that. Krishna is a person, and he's not forced by any of our practice of devotional service that we practice like this and this, and then it's sure Krishna, he must give us the result. Other processes actually are like that. Karma kanda, going to heavenly planets, worshipping demigods, is like that. Demigods, you worship demigods probably with the proper rituals and the right mantras and sacrifice like that. Demigods, they must give the results. This is what we hear about here in the scriptures, how, for example, we hear about Hiranyakashipu performing great austerities to satisfy Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma comes and Lord Brahma is giving him the benediction because he has to. That's the demigods, they must give him. Hiranyakashipu performed the proper worship of Hiranyakashipu, and he is Brahma is obliged to give him the results. Even though he's a complete demon, he should not have those benedictions, but that's how demigods they work. And even practice of Mayavadi and like that, and achieving personal liberation, if you do it really perfectly, of course that takes really extreme precision and like that, but if you actually do it, you will achieve the results. That's actually, you can say, mechanical. This happens mechanically, but Krishna is not like that. Achieving Krishna is not mechanical. You know, you cannot. Krishna is completely free to do whatever he likes. Of course, he has general tendencies, and he generally acts in specific ways which are, you can say, somewhat predictable. You know, but really, ultimately, Krishna is completely unpredictable. He's not forced in any way, and therefore we see sometimes there's some completely contradictory things. How could Ajamil achieve liberation just by being sinful, but just by reciting the name of Narayan, indicating his son, or someone like Daksha. It's also in the fourth canon. Daksha he did a small mistake. He became angry at Shiva. Otherwise, he was one of the greatest Prajapatis. Great Brahman, great saints, very learned, extremely pious. Of course, begetting children like anything, but not like anything. Highly qualified children like anything. It's different from getting children like cats and dogs and rats. I mean, if you got hundreds of children and they're all great souls, extremely qualified. This is Daksha. So Daksha it's not a demon. He is he's so great that even in the sixth canto, he offers a Hamsa prayer as Vishnu appears in front of him. He has direct darshan vision of Krishna. So he's very great, and a great devotee, and a great soul in all kinds of ways. Still he got the head of a goat. So how is that? Again, so Krishna is free. He simply reciprocates. Bharata Maharaj made a small mistake, and he thought of a deer at the moment of death, and what was his mistake? He just wanted to help, this helpless deer calf that was being washed away, and out of his good heart, he was not a demon. He was not envious or evil or anything. He wanted to help this little deer calf, but he did make a small mistake, but still he took the birth. He ended up in the body of a deer. So so we see Krishna he is completely free. There's no way that he is in any way obliged. He feels obliged by love and devotion. And we know this is Krishna's weakness. He is when someone actually develops love for him, devotion to him, it kind of melts Krishna's heart, and he becomes somewhat under the control of that devotee. But then again, he's not controlled. He wants to be controlled and has pure love and so on. But anything else, there's nothing mechanical about the love of the devotee towards Krishna. And as soon as one starts thinking something mechanical, takes it for granted, or starts anyway misusing Krishna's mercy like that, immediately it's withdrawn. Krishna, if the devotee becomes proud, immediately Krishna just